All right, we are right at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and kick off today's session. Hello, welcome to everyone on the line. Thank you so much for joining our Hackett webcast, sharing how Bacardi Enterprises Services leads global delivery from Costa Rica. I do see a number of attendees are still filing in, hopping over from your last meeting, so we'll start with some housekeeping and some quick introductions while everyone gets settled in the session. Slide, please. First and foremost, we are recording today's session, so all lines have been muted to ensure that call quality. If you do have any questions for our panelists today, you can submit those via the Q&A functionality. Or if you need any technical support, you can reach out to myself, the host, using the chat functionality. And both of those are going to be located in the banner at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We are going to keep an eye on those Q&As. We'll plan to bring those up at the end of our presentation, time permitting. And we've also received a number of questions in advance, so we'll address those as well during the Q&A portion of today's session. All that said, though, anything that we're not able to answer live, we will plan to respond to offline after the event has concluded, so feel free to submit any and all questions. And finally, if you'd like to view our session in full screen mode, you can do so by clicking in the arrows in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, and that'll put you in full screen mode. Today's webcast session is eligible for CPE credit. If you'd like to receive CPE credit, you are required to be on the line for at least 50 minutes. You'll need to participate in all of our polling questions, as well as complete the evaluation survey. It's going to pop up in your browser after the presentation has concluded. However, even if you are not attending to receive CPE credit, we do encourage everyone to participate in that quick survey. It does help us continuously improve our webcast. Today's learning objectives are to understand the evolution of Bacardi Enterprise Services, to define Bacardi's solution portfolio, and finally, to learn how business process transformation is being used by BES to unlock value. And with that, I'll turn it over to today's speakers to kick off the session.
Thank you. This is Penny Weller. I'm your Global Business Services North America Program Leader. Welcome, everyone, and especially welcome to our speakers. We're very excited to hear from Bacardi Enterprise Services today. This webcast is brought to us by our relationship that we have with the CINDE organization. For those of you not familiar, CINDE is the Costa Rica Investment Promotion Agency, and we're honored to have the introduction made today by Ana Romera. She has extensive background and credentials in international markets, and she's now been with the CINDE organization for 13 years and has exceptional skills in managing relationships, helping senior executives find solutions in the country of Costa Rica. So welcome, Ana, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Julia, and thank you, our guests, for joining for this webinar. Actually, from CINDE's side, I'm very honored to be here to present our success story. As the Costa Rican Investment Promotion Agency, we have over 40 years of experience in actually guiding multinational companies in assessing Costa Rica as a potential location, but also investing and actually establishing operations in the country. So we're very keen on helping every company that is looking at a potential location in the Americas to actually come to us and actually use our services, which are for free, to support you in this due diligence and ongoing support. Actually, we're a helping hand in Costa Rica for your establishment of operations. Also, I would like to share with you, I'm very honored to say that CINDE has been given the award of Best FDI Agency by the ITC, International Trade Center, for 2019. We just finished our 2021 audit, so I will be sharing our results early next year, but we hope to keep on our ranking as #1 FDI agency. And also very important to mention our value proposition is very focused around people, about prosperity, and around our planet. I wanted to share a little bit of the numbers of 2020 because it was a challenging year and how we did actually last year in terms of the pandemic. So Penny, if you can switch to the next slide, please. Actually, 2020 was a very difficult year for everyone. It was challenging for everyone. But actually, given the challenges that we faced, 2020 gave us very good results. Actually, as a country, as Costa Rica, we were very resilient, and our companies were very resilient with the whole pandemic and how we were able to deliver and how we were able to host the companies. And actually, in our labor of attracting foreign direct investment, we had to change our ways and pass through from a presential mode to a fully virtual. We were able to create over 19,000 jobs for 2020, attract over 81 companies, which are 26 new companies and 55 reinvestments. Also a large diversification, not only companies that came from traditional geographies, which are specifically the US, but other geographies as Latin America, Europe, and others. But also we were awarded, or Costa Rica secured the top spot in Greenfield FDI performance for 2020 and we were given this by the FDI Intelligence, which says a lot about what we were able to accomplish in a very difficult year for everyone. Also, I wanted to share with you that 98% of our companies were able to actually move to a full remote or work from home scenario. And all of this was possible because of a good legislation or good framework that we have that allow the companies to do that, but also a good infrastructure that allowed them to have complete redundancy in terms of telecommunications and send their people home. I can say that in 2 weeks, we were able to send most of our operations to a work from home model with no major disruptions in their operations. Also, I wanted to share that 95% of the companies experience benefits from this work from home model, and 82% said that they had unchanged or lower attrition rates during the pandemic. 23% experienced increasing productivity with these new models, and 60% were able to recruit even in these tough times where a lot of things were changing for most of these organizations. So in order to share what has happened in Costa Rica and what is Costa Rica, I think we're going to share with you one of our success stories. And but I think we have a poll question, right, Penny? Oh, here is our contact information. I forgot that we had there. But if you wanted to contact us and receive more information and data about the country, I'll be happy to share. That's our 2 emails and contact information. So please feel free to contact us at any time. But maybe we can switch to the poll question. So we would like to know, what is your relationship with Costa Rica? I know there's some companies that have already operations here, but others that might be looking at us. So if you can share with us your experience, that will be amazing.
Thanks, Anna. As a reminder to our attendees on the line, this is the first of our CPE required polling questions, so please do be sure to participate and click submit so we can capture your response. We will leave the question open for about 15 more seconds.
Yeah. So it will be interesting to understand at what stage you are and maybe how we can help. Mm-hmm.
Okay, just a few attendees wrapping up.
Great. Thank you.
All right, the poll is closed. Anna, you should see the results.
Okay, okay. Yes, this is very consistent with other polls that we have from the companies that have logged in other webinars. Definitely, we have an important presence in Costa Rica of shared services. We have over 69 shared services operations that are currently operating out of Costa Rica, and definitely expanding their services over in Costa Rica. So definitely that's one thing that we're seeing a lot, and that's part of the results that we saw last year. And I think it's part of the results that we will see this year. So definitely it makes sense, but definitely we're seeing newcomers to the country, and there's a lot of things that we can actually offer as a country. And I think this wraps up pretty nicely to our speaker today. So I will close here the poll. Mm-hmm. So in order to share what has been the experience of Costa Rica in the shared services industry, definitely the best way to do it is with a success story. And one of our, and I have the honor, actually, the Bacardi project has been a very successful project in Costa Rica, not only because how they were able to leverage the opportunities that Costa Rica had to offer, but how they have transformed this whole operation. And I'm very honored also to introduce Christian Rodriguez, VP from Bacardi Enterprise Services. Christian has over 20 years of experience in the call center, outsourcing, BPO, shared services industry, and has worked for many companies that also have operations in Costa Rica, like P&G, IBM, Western Union, Amazon, among others. And he can share what has been Bacardi's journey, but also what is next for Bacardi. And I think that's the success story that we want to hear. It's not just where you started, but where you're going to, and how with great leadership and great focus on what it's that the GBS can actually bring to the organization, you can accomplish a project like Bacardi's project. So with no further introduction, Christian, the floor is yours. Share with us Bacardi's story for Costa Rica. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anna. Can you hear me okay? Yep, okay. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks a lot to the Hackett Group for the opportunity to be part of this presentation, of this meeting. And thank you to CINDE, not just for the support they give us on a daily basis to our operation here in Costa Rica, but also to have the opportunity to interact with other stakeholders and external parties like yourselves. As Ana said, my name is Christian Rodriguez. I have over 20 years of experience, mostly in the shared services area, based in Costa Rica, but as we'll see a little later, with a global footprint and global responsibilities. And the intent today is to share with you our story, which is particularly, I would say, not only successful, but also interesting from the way the organization was set up and the way our scope has been evolving over time. So I tried to leave the presentation really short and to the point, and hopefully we're going to have enough interaction through the Q&A chat and at the end of the session to provide additional information as required. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And that's, contrary to popular belief, we don't, in the spirits industry, we don't drink in the office all day, every day. So for instance, these boxes are just for show, right? But we wanted to bring some of the culture and some of the products to the presentation today and get the right context. So out of those drinks or cocktails that we have on the screen right now, which one have you tried? Which one is your favorite? And the reason we decided to include this question is because many people think Bacardi is only about rum. Actually, we own over 200 brands across the whole spectrum of the spirits industry, concentrating mostly on the premium and super premium liquids. So you may see some familiar names there, like our Bombay Sapphire Gin, Fiero Martini, which is a rather new expression of our Martini vermouth, William Lawson's, which is one of our Scotch whiskey brands, Bacardi Carta Blanca, probably our best known brand, Grey Goose Vodka, Saint Germain liqueur, Duor Scotch, which is one of my personal favorites, Patron Tequila, which is a brand we acquired approximately 3 years ago, and I had the luxury and the pleasure to be at the Patron Hacienda a couple of weeks back. So please let us know which one of these drinks you know, which one of these drinks you love. All right, mostly rum and vodka. That's great. And tequila is coming up quickly. That's great to see. Thank you. So we can go to the next slide, please. And I just wanted to show this slide to you. I know it's a lot of text, but this is a slide. I've been with the company for six years, by the way. And the BES or shared services operation has been up and running for 7 years. So I joined the company when the organization was approaching its first anniversary. As those of you in the shared services industry know, the first 2 years in an operation like this tend to be the worst that we can have because of transition issues. The operation is not stable. You cannot reach your KPIs. Your financial commitments are off the chart. You have attrition issues all over the place, right? But early on in our journey, we decided to sit down and work on a vision of what we wanted the BS organization to be for ourselves, but mostly for the company, and what kind of value we expect that BS to bring to the company. And we review this slide every 2 years approximately to make sure that it's up to speed and current and still relevant. And what I would like to highlight here is that from the early times of the organization, we decided that we wanted to be the preferred business partner for Bacardi. And I make emphasis on the word preferred, because you may say, well, that doesn't make sense, right? You are an in-house shared services organization. It's not like the rest of the company has any alternative to go to elsewhere. Well, that's not entirely true, right? And the reason we decided to put this like this is because we realize there's a lot of potential competitors that could provide the same kind of services to Bacardi, either different in-house organizations, or the company could decide to outsource most or part of what we do. And that's just a reality of the market and a reality of the ecosystem in which we operate, right? So by constantly reviewing our financials, our service delivery model, our customer satisfaction, the trust that our stakeholders have in us, we really push ourselves to be the best that we can be, so that the company doesn't even have to think about any service alternatives. And this has worked for us very well in the last 7 years. And again, it's a relentless pursuit of better and better ways to serve the company, so that we don't have to even think about what other providers are out there that could do the work that we do. And the pillars that we base that assumption on, you can see on the bottom: people, cost management, customer service, quality of service, which is slightly different, and business analytics. And we'll touch on each one of those pillars to different degrees throughout the rest of the presentation. Can you move to the next one, please? So this is just to give you a snapshot of our history and how we have progressed over time. So when I joined 5-6 years ago, the organization was actually called BBS. So we've had 3 different brands, if you will, over the course of 7 years. And that's a reflection of the change and the evolution and maturity that we've been achieving with time. So the very beginning, we were called BBS, Bacardi Business Services. And our services, as we were moving them into BBS, were really decentralized. We didn't have consistent processes. We didn't strive for efficiency. And actually, for the most part, being very honest, I don't think we even were good at measuring that efficiency. Just to give you an example, when I joined the company, we didn't have any real-time KPI dashboards, for instance. What we had was a 20-plus page PowerPoint deck that got published around the 20th or the 21st of each month with the previous month's KPIs. So by the time the deck was published, it was already outdated, right? By 3 weeks or so. So, and of course, as you may imagine, our stakeholders didn't rely on that information or didn't use that information for anything. So one of the first things we did was to implement a real-time quality and metrics and volumetric system. So we have relevant information, not just for us internally to make decisions on our operation, but also to give an enhanced sense of transparency to our stakeholders and our clients in terms of how we were doing. And that was a very welcome change that we implemented a few years ago. The next stage in our evolution was GBS, and that lasted until about 2 years ago. We started seeing the benefits of the economies of scale, increasing our scope, and we'll see in a few slides what our global footprint looks like today. We improved the control in terms of our processes, our process maps. We are a SOX compliant company voluntarily because we are a privately held company, so we don't have the financial obligation to be SOX compliant. However, a number of years ago, we made a decision to be SOX compliant. So most of the process controls for the company are actually executed here from BS in our different locations. In that stage, when we were GBS, there was a mix of centralized and regional service delivery from our part, which proved to be at that point complex and a little hard to manage. But then, as we'll see later, that became one of our strengths in terms of strategic approach and our geographical approach to delivering services. And then the current stage in which we are today as BS, we have been given the liberty to run it as a business, as a true business partner to the rest of the organization, as a key strategic corporate function, rather than some obscure, back office black box somewhere. We, I want to say, almost 3 years ago, introduced constant transformation and improvement as an element to delivering services from the operation, and that has allowed us to do many of the things that you have on that vignette, which is optimizing customer experience. I'm sorry, achieve efficiencies, maximizing economies of scale, introducing automation and process improvement in everything we do, and that's really the seal of how we deliver services today. If we can go to the next one, please. So what do we do, and what type of services or solutions do we bring to the company? So in the next one, we'll be able to see that. These are our 4 core service areas. So we can click on R2R. That's typically what most companies set up first in their shared services environment, right? And we were not the exception. So accounting and finance was the first piece of work that we migrated into BES. And that meant moving work from all over the world, markets, regional headquarters, and even corporate headquarters in Bermuda into our location. Today, we have expanded our scope in accounting and finance to the point that approximately 95 to 97% of our financial transactions required for the company to complete its financial statements flow through BES. So it's a significant amount of responsibility and exposure that we have. Right now, we are moving some corporate functions that have traditionally sat in headquarters in Bermuda as part of the financial statements release process, and that is being moved into our organization as well. So we are moving, I would say, upstream and downstream to be able to have a more critical and more present role in releasing financials for the company. And of course, that has to do with safeguarding discipline and financial statutory requirements in each of the markets that we operate. The next one is procure to pay, or P2P. And again, this is an example of a function where we started with a very limited approach or a very limited scope, mostly doing purchase order processing and then processing payments, et cetera, et cetera. But now we've expanded the scope to include invoice management, payments, direct debits, vendor master data, balance sheet reconciliation, et cetera, et cetera. And this is one of the areas where we have most direct contact with clients and stakeholders. So we do have what we call buying centers, which are small centers of excellence that take care of the end-to-end procurement needs for our suppliers in that region. So we have one in the US for North America. We have one here in Costa Rica for Latin America. We have one in the Netherlands that will soon move to Poland, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, for Europe, and then another one in India. So our suppliers in each one of those regions get in touch with our buying centers via chat, via email, via phone, and our primos, and that's something important to mention. We call ourselves primos in Bacardi. That's the Spanish word for cousins, because we all see each other as family. So we have primos in each one of those countries taking care of the needs of the regional suppliers for that particular region. And that's been received very well by our suppliers, but also internally in the company. Next, it's order to cash. And in the spirits industry, collecting money from our clients and distributors can be a true challenge. I know that's true in many other industries, but in our case, you really need to know the spirits industry, and you really need to know the market where you operate. And the reason I bring this up is because initially at the beginning, we thought we were going to be able to conduct or operate our collections fully from Costa Rica for the world. that proved to be a very difficult model to implement, even when we found the European languages that we needed, even when we found primos willing to work European and business hours from Costa Rica. That proved to be very challenging. So we decided to change our service delivery model, and we'll talk that in a minute, to a more hybrid footprint, where we have sites strategically located around the world, but also primos sitting in key markets, working hand in hand with our finance and commercial teams to be able to be more effective in terms not only of collections, but also maintaining relationships with our distributors and our clients, managing rebates, which is how we call discounts in our industry, managing disputes, insurance claims, all those sorts of things. So that's also, I would say, a success story in terms of being able to recognize that the service delivery model we implemented at the beginning was not necessarily the best one, and we were able to evolve and to change. And then payroll, I would say, is one of the most recent additions to the team. And by recent, I mean a couple of years back. Between our site here in Costa Rica and the site in Barcelona, we process payroll for approximately 35 of the markets where we operate in the world. We use ADP as a global service provider to help us in some portions of the payroll processing. But for the most part, we are the ones responsible of the primo facing experience and also the backend responsibilities, right? So, and this is what I call core. In a few minutes, we're going to be able to talk about where we are moving into BS right now as we speak, which is going to be part of our expansion for the future. If we can move to the next one, please. So, as you have seen so far, we've had quite a number of, I would say, evolution taking place in the way we organize ourselves and the way we deliver services to our internet customers, and in the way we even manage our processes and our people, right? So I would like to share a little bit more of that with you. If we can go to the next one, please. So as I said before, at the beginning, it was just a global service delivery center here in Costa Rica, which is what you can see on the left-hand side of the slide. And then we had market single point of contact people sitting in specific markets, but those were mostly finance people in the market that we interfaced with for specific tasks and specific processes. Sometimes it had to do with reporting needs or statutory requirements in the markets. But again, I would say 95% of all of our service delivery was concentrated here in Costa Rica. And then we decided to set up a delivery center in Barcelona. I want to say that was probably 5 years ago, just to move some of the global functions from Costa Rica to a European time zone and make it more convenient both for our markets and for our primos. But back then, it didn't have any other, I would say, strategic implication other than being closer, physically to our customers. If you take a look at the current state on the right-hand side, we've evolved that model quite a bit, where we now have sites in different markets in different countries. We'll see that list in a few minutes. Let's say the global hub is still here in Costa Rica. This is where we have the majority of our primos. This is where we have most of our global leadership team, and most of the processes are run still from Costa Rica. But between having regional service delivery centers in the different regions, and also gradually moving to a center of excellence or COE topology, we found it to be easier for us to be effective in interacting with our clients, with our customers, with our stakeholders around the world, to be able to adapt to our customers' needs in a more timely fashion. And so that's why or how we came to the hybrid model that we have today, that again is perhaps not standard. And I personally haven't seen any other company that has a service delivery model similar to the one we have. I have to admit, in the first couple of years, it was really hard for us to manage that service delivery model because there was a lot of confusion, even with the markets, in terms of roles and responsibilities, in terms of, if you have a BS primo sitting in a specific country, does that primo report or work more closely with a local finance organization or with a global shared services organization, right? So if we can go to the next slide, that'll make it easier to explain. So as I said before, the global hub is still here in Costa Rica. And we now have, as you can see in the top part of the slide, we have now 4 other sites around the world. So we still have the one in Barcelona. That was the first one we set up outside of Costa Rica. Since September of 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, we set up a new site in Shanghai. And actually that's a success story in itself, because it was, so the primos that we have in Shanghai were recruited, trained, and certified remotely, 100% remotely. None of us were able to go back to China. And all of that was done by people sitting here in Costa Rica, despite the 14-hour time zone difference between here and Shanghai. Recently, a couple of months ago, we started having primos, as I said before, delivering buying center COE services out of India. And as we speak, we're hiring the first BS primos in Warsaw, in what will be our newest service delivery center for Europe. But besides that, and the reason I say sometimes our service delivery model can be a little complex, we have BS primos sitting in key markets, like the ones you see in the map, like the UK, Benelux, Germany, France, Italy, etc. And again, the reason for that is we learned, sometimes painfully, that it's a lot better to have shared service resources sitting right in the market to help the finance and the commercial and the HR teams, rather than trying to have people only delivering services from our centers, right? Some of the transition work that's taking place right now, for instance, HR services that is being moved into BS as we speak, and that will include compensation and benefits, will include talent acquisition, will include Workday administration. Workday is the ERP we use for HR services. All of that is being moved into BS. And the fact that we already have people in those markets, even when those people today are doing mostly finance work, is really helping us set the stage and also engage in a productive way with our stakeholders on the ground to be able to make those transitions successful. So, that's how this service delivery model came to be, how it's been evolved. In the next slide, we have a list of the markets that we provide services to. It's a pretty extensive list. And there are interesting things like, for instance, payroll for Australia is delivered out of Costa Rica, not Shanghai, not Europe. Payroll for our headquarters in Bermuda, including some of our top executives, is being delivered out of Costa Rica as well. You can see some of the languages that we support on the right-hand side. And something that I always mention that is, I would say, a key differentiator in our service delivery model and in our global footprint compared to other companies, and I know this will make Anna and CINDE very happy, is the fact that typically you'll have a site in, let's say, Manila, and then you'll have a site in India, a site in Eastern Europe, and another one, let's say, in Costa Rica for the Americas, and then they all report into headquarters, whatever your headquarters is. In our case, that's different. So all of the almost 400 BS primos that we have worldwide, and let's remember this is a very small company, right? It's roughly 7,000 of us globally, and BS is roughly 400 out of those 7,000. All of those BS primos around the world report into the global hub here in Costa Rica, and then I report into headquarters in Bermuda. So what that means is that 100% of the decisions worldwide having to do with shared services delivery are made by our team here. No intervention from Bermuda required. Of course, it wasn't free, right? So we earned that right through time and that trust. But I think that has given us not only a really strong entrepreneurial spirit, but also the ability and the independence to make decisions as we see fit. As I mentioned in a previous slide, we manage this as our own business and as our own piece of the business within Bacardi, as if it was our money and if our last name was Bacardi, right? So that has given us a lot of autonomy in terms of how we operate the business and how we make decisions regarding the business. And then if we can click to the next slide, which is the almost the last slide, this is a really important component that we put in place almost 3 years ago. We have a team called BPT, that's a business process transformation. And the purpose of the BPT team is to provide transformation, change experience, and analytics abilities and capabilities to the organization. I'm going to be very honest here. When we set up the BPT team, we had no idea of what was coming for us, both in terms of the pandemic, but also in terms of growth and scope expansion for BS. As a way of context, our fiscal year runs from April 1st to March 31st. So we are, about half of our fiscal year right now. And our headcount will have grown by approximately 28% globally by the time this fiscal year is done in March. And then for next fiscal year, which begins in April, the projection is similar to grow between 30 and 40%. And the reason for that is twofold. One is our business has been very, very good in the wake of the pandemic because of consumption patterns, all of the things that we've heard about in some of the consumer goods companies as well. That has had a very positive impact on our business overall. And then we as a company made the decision to take the opportunity and take advantage of the good times to embark in a very aggressive transformation of the business and of the company. And what that means to an extent is to keep moving a lot of functions and a lot of responsibilities into BS. I already mentioned human resources. Other transitions that are taking place as we speak are, I would say, remnants of core finance processes that were left in the markets and in the regions. So those are being moved into BS as well as we speak. A big portion that we're moving right now is what we call ops finance. To us, ops is manufacturing plus supply chain plus logistics. So all of the financial work that revolves around those functions has traditionally been out of scope for BS, but right now we're moving those functions into my team. And so again, the projection for the next 3 to 5 years is to keep growing at a 30 to 40% year over year basis globally, not just in Costa Rica. So for instance, most of the HR services that we're migrating into BS will actually be delivered out of our new site in Poland, but with oversight and responsibility by the global leadership team, which again, for the most part, sits here in Costa Rica. So the main services that the business process transformation or BPT team provide are OPEX or operational excellence, and it has to do with process design, process mapping, process improvement, operational discipline, etc., which has proven to be a key skill set for us to develop and bring knowledge into the organization. The other one is business intelligence, and that has two components. One is reporting or data mining, the data generation, and the other one is analytics in itself and putting together dashboards and providing analytical services to our stakeholders, etc. That's something that we've been developing for the last 5 years or so. PMO, we now have a global project management office sitting here in BES. And the newest addition to BPT is what we call ChangeX or change experience, which is given the amount of movement and the potential chaos that could result as a product of moving so many things to BES in the next few years, how can we minimize the risk, not only operational risk, but mostly controls and people risk related to all of those moves. So we set up a change experience discipline, a pillar. As far as we know, it's the first time within Bacardi as a whole that we address change experience in a deliberate way. And that has proven to be very successful, mostly with the HR transitions that we are conducting right now. I like to refer to the BPT team as an in-house boutique consultancy firm, if you will, that provides services mostly to BES and then to the stakeholders that are moving their work into our organization, but mostly for Bacardi, at a large, right? So we're starting to see organizations coming to us asking for us to sell them, process improvement services or project management services. And our vision is to, have this be a business proposition for the entire corporation, not just for BES as short services, right? So that's I think the next slide is the last one, and that's the information I had to share. So we decided to add a polling question towards the end of the presentation. We have found that particularly this last portion of BPT, business process transformation, is a value, is a tool to unlock value to the rest of the organization. So in your particular case, how does your GBS provide that value back to the organization? Is that through operational excellence, business intelligence, PMO, change adoption, which are the components that I just shared with you, or is it something else that you're doing that maybe we should learn on how to keep unlocking value for the organization?
All right, we'll leave the poll open for just about 10 more seconds while people wrap up their responses.
Very good. Any feedback from you on that?
It doesn't surprise me because I think that's the most developed pillar out of what we call BPT. And that's where you have black belts coming in and process analysts and process experts, and you conduct value-added sessions to really break down processes and define whether at the time that you're going to move a process from the market to shared services, do you move it all? Do you move only a certain portion of it? Do you eliminate parts of the process? Do you change parts of the process? So I'm not surprised. I would agree that's probably the strongest and most widely used toolkit within BPT for us.
Great. Well,
So
Julia, I know we have a lot of questions, so let's see what we have.
Yes, we absolutely do. We are wrapping at the top of the hour, so we will get to as many questions as we possibly can in the next about 18 minutes. I think we should get to a good number of them. But just a reminder to our attendees on the line, if you do have questions that we don't get to live, we will plan to respond after the event has concluded. So feel free to send them all in, and we'll get to as many as we can during the session.
Mm-hmm.
All right. First question that we have on the chat, can you expand on what you said about the SOX controls? You said that the majority of the SOX controls are performed there. Could you talk about that shift and how you got management comfortable the controls can ensure the accuracy of the financial statements that are executed in service centers?
Thank you for that question. That's a very interesting one. I have to admit, this didn't happen by design. So we didn't have a grand vision to say, let's centralize SOX controls in the shared service organization, right? That kind of happened organically. And it's really easy to think about it, right? I mean, the more work and the more responsibilities you move into the shared service organization, the more of those controls naturally either tend to move with the processes or get left behind in the market. And that seems a little bit unnatural, right? So I would say the last couple of years, there's been a real push, even by our external auditors, PwC, to say, well, first of all, from a logical perspective, it makes more sense if the majority of those controls sit with BS just because they run most of the process anyway, right? And then, and this is PwC speaking, not me, they found that executing, updating, and maintaining the controls when they are in a shared services environment, at least in our case, it's a lot easier and requires less effort than if they are scattered all over the place in different markets under different responsibilities. To the point that right now, we are talking with our new corporate controller. His name is Brian Treadway. He just joined us from the Coca-Cola company. And we're talking about setting up a global center of excellence for SOX in BES that would bring in some more SOX controls that today are outside of our purview. But again, this wasn't done by design. It just happened as a natural consequence of moving so many processes into BS.
All right, great. Okay, next question on the list. An attendee asks, how do you manage the tax implications of having BES resources in other countries reporting into Costa Rica?
So I'm not a tax expert by any stretch of the imagination, but what I do know is that we have a pretty complex trading structure that allows us to have all of the intercompany relationships mapped out between the markets, between the different legal entities, the holding companies, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe a simple way to answer this is that, and I'll use Patron as an example. We do have a team doing finance for Patron for the tequila brand in Mexico that reports into BES. That's the only case where we have, let's say, front-end finance people reporting into BES for reasons that we don't have time to refer to right now. So those people are employed by one of the local legal entities in Mexico. The reporting happens more from a, let's say, organizational and HR perspective into resources here in Costa Rica. But for all cost and tax purposes, they are local resources sitting in Mexico, reporting to a local legal entity in Mexico. And of course, we have the intercompany agreements in place that allow us to either pay or charge, depending on the case, for the services and the resources that we have in each one of those jurisdictions. So I hope that answers the question.
Great. All right, next question on the list. An attendee asks, can you talk a bit about decision rights? For example, do you dictate to your various business lines how you'd like a certain process done? Things like technology choices, process steps, interface. You talked a bit about your interface with headquarters, but was thinking more about interface with your internal customers.
That's a very good question, and I have to say that's that's probably one of the areas where we still have a lot of room for improvement. So I would say we don't dictate how we would like to run a process. We have a very open and very collaborative relationship and communication with the markets and with tech in terms of how to run a process, what tools to use, where to apply automation, et cetera, et cetera. I have to say that at this point in time, given our level of maturity and the level of trust that most of our stakeholders have in us, they most of the time take our suggestion in terms of how to do that. The big area where we still have opportunity is when it comes to global process owners or business process leads, which are roles that exist in other organizations. So for instance, you would have a global process owner for P2P, right, for procure to pay. In Bacardi, we have those roles, I'm sorry to say, on paper only. They are not very effective. And sometimes, for instance, recently I found out that the business process owner, or the global process owner, I should say, for order to cash is some guy sitting in Geneva that has no direct interaction with any of my teams or any of the markets. And there are historical reasons why that is. And so one of the efforts that we are undertaking right now is to better define those GPO and BPL roles, and to the extent that is possible, moving those under BES, so that with them comes the governance, comes policy design, comes process improvement, comes risk assessment, et cetera, et cetera. We understand from a separation of duties standpoint, not everything should be in BES. And so we're trying to find the right balance between us and the controllership organization to be able to do that. By the way, BES is treated as a region from a controllership perspective. So we have a controller for EMEA, another one for Europe, another one for the Americas, and there's one for BES. So we're treated as a region, and that controller, is in charge of keeping the weights and balances between our responsibilities, our deliverables, but also our controls, right? So I know that's a bit complex answer, but unfortunately, that's how we're set up today.
Great. Right. Another attendee asks, which groups within the finance function still report directly through the CFO and not through the BES?
I indirectly report into the CFO as well, right? So I'm still part of the finance organization, but I would say the teams that have to do with revenue growth management, marketing finance, and what we call performance management, which in most other organizations is called FP&A. Those teams still report into the central function, finance function. Having said that, there are also efforts underway to move bits and pieces of some of those processes into BS, mostly coming from marketing finance and performance management. But I don't think we're going to see any real progress in those areas in the next 2 to 3 years. But yeah, I mean, there are still, I would say, significant pieces of finance resources that are reporting to the central function. But again, we are continuously taking a look at those areas and finding opportunities for improvement and to generate efficiency for the company.
Another question through the Q&A. You mentioned that ops finance is now being moved into the BES. Will anyone be left on the ground with the business, or will everyone move to one of your centers? For anyone left on the ground, will they report through the BES?
So this is very interesting because when we started engaging in our what we call the discovery phase to really understand what this work was all about, in round numbers, let's talk about 15 plants where we have ops finance primos doing very similar work between each other. The expected outcome of their work is pretty similar in nature, but each one of those plants uses different templates, reports different information, sometimes at different with different time frames. So it's a mess. So right now the scenario is that we have approximately 3 dozen ops finance primos sitting in those plants. We think we're going to be able to do that work with probably less than 20 people, most of whom are going to be centralized, most likely in Poland, because all of those plants are located in Europe or in India. And then we're going to have a few people left on the ground doing some tactical work that cannot be done at a centralized level. And those are also going to be reporting into BES. Having said that, many of the primos that currently sit in that ops function doing that work are going to be moving to different roles within ops that have nothing to do with what they're doing today. And that's a similar approach to the one we're using in HR services, moving into BES. The primos that are being released, let's say, of the tasks that are moving into BES, for the most part, of course, there's going to be efficiencies and there's going to be headcount moves, etc. But there will be a number of primos in HR that will be relocated or reassigned, I would say, reallocated to different functions within HR.
Great. Another question that came in, we've got no shortage of questions, so we'll get to as many as we can in the next few minutes. Just a reminder to our attendees, keep them coming and we'll answer what we need to offline, but we've got a few more minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
How did you determine your location strategy for BES?
So I wasn't here when that decision was first made, but I know the story. And the company was doing very badly, I have to say, 8, 10 years ago, both from a top line and bottom line perspective. We were losing market share. We were pouring money all over the place. And a decision was made to set up an initial short service center in Coral Gables in Florida, in the US. I don't know why there. Well, I know why, because that's our regional office for North America, but I mean, it's not a known market for short services, right? And the model wasn't working, mostly because it was voluntary, meaning going back to one of the previous questions, right? The markets could get their services from BES or they couldn't if they didn't want to. So as you may imagine, that resulted in actually more resources all around the world doing the work that originally was supposed to be moved into BES. When the company faced a crunch time and they realized how badly they were doing, they made a very bold decision to pick Costa Rica as a global hub. And of course, CINDE had a lot to do with that. And I say this because this was a greenfield for Bacardi. Bacardi didn't even have a sales office in Costa Rica. As a market, as you may imagine, Costa Rica is very small for Bacardi. There's only 5.5 million people here. So they did an analysis, and I don't know, Anna, if you know the other countries that they considered. I know they considered Mexico for a fact, Costa Rica, and I don't know where else. And they found and they saw the value proposition in terms of talent, in terms of economics, in terms of stability, etc., that allowed them to make the decision back then to set up the initial site in Costa Rica. And then Barcelona, Shanghai, Delhi, and Poland, we've made taking into consideration the changing needs of our clients and of our stakeholders, and how can we be close to them, be responsive, be flexible, and in sometimes, like the case of India, we have such a large presence in India, not only commercially, but also in terms of manufacturing and operations, that it only makes sense to provide services to India from India. And related to another question that I'm looking at here in the chat, yes, Costa Rica is much more expensive than India, but we are right now in the process of moving some functions from Costa Rica to India. Again, in our particular case, is in Delhi, not Bangalore. And we are looking at our India operation, our India BES site, to take over some other regional responsibilities for EMEA, within the next couple of years.
If I may add to what Christian just answered about the location strategy, I think when Bacardi was looking at Costa Rica and I was involved in that project, definitely because of the needs that they have and they needed this greenfield, and because of the situation of the company, they also needed a location that had the experience, the proven track record, the whole structure behind that could actually help them implement this project really fast. And Costa Rica was a good solution for that, in terms of the experience that we have in shared services, but also all the academia and work that we have done in terms of delivering talent in that specific area. So I think that played a huge role in the implementation of the project. And also elaborating a little bit on the question about India, I think India works very well with Costa Rica. We complement a lot of our shared services have double operations in Costa Rica, but also back up with India. So I think it's complementary. Given the nearshore factor, the customer support, and other functions, definitely there's a lot of things that can happen nearshore, but there's a lot of other processes that can then be moved to India, and both operations can work perfectly fine. So I think there is a huge collaboration between the two geographies, and that are a success for most of our shared services and other operations that we have here. Even Indian companies have a presence in Costa Rica.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have time for maybe one or two more. We definitely won't get to everything today, but a few questions around talent. One attendee asked, do you have any concerns about the talent pool in general and for intelligent automation skills in particular?
That's a question that we've been asking ourselves the last 20 years, and CINDE has been a very active part of that conversation. Again, this is a very small country, right? Only 5.5 million people. So there's a limited pool of talent that we can dip into, right? I want to say maybe 10 years ago we were really worried that we were going to run dry of talent, and we would have to shift the strategy a little bit. But something that has happened that is very interesting is a twofold phenomenon. One is people, especially young people here in Costa Rica, more and more tend to specialize in the areas that our organizations need. So traditionally, I mean, for a Costa Rican, their dream was going to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? That has changed, or a teacher. And of course, we still need those talents, right? But for the most part, people are shifting more towards IT, business administration, BI, industrial engineering, process improvement, those things. So we keep finding the people we need. The other phenomenon is that very naturally, and due to the quality of the talent here in Costa Rica, most of our organizations go through the value add curve really steeply, meaning very quickly we realize that we can do more here than we originally expected to. And then, we sometimes hit a mark where we say, well, let's take, for instance, contact center work and ship it outside of Costa Rica, because obviously it's cheaper somewhere else, either in Latin America or elsewhere. And then let's reconvert some of the existing talent into higher added value functions, right? So generally speaking, I'm not worried. I think we can still find the talent that we need. In our particular case, as I said before, not 100% of the growth is going to be in Costa Rica, given the fact that we're truly a global operation now. But we haven't had issues, at least in our operation, to find talent. And related to something that Ana Maria referred to at the beginning, our attrition through the pandemic has been our lowest historically. And so, that's also interesting to see how that has actually benefited us.
Great. All right, that does bring us right to time. And I know we've got more questions coming in, so feel free to send them and we'll address them offline. But thank you so much, Christian. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.
Any final remarks before we close the session today?
Well, if sometimes questions pop up after the fact, right? So if there's anything specific or anything else that you would like to know, either through CINDE or through the Hackett group, I think my contact information was at the beginning of the recording as well. Just feel free to reach out. Thanks again to the Hackett group and to CINDE for the opportunity. We love to share our experience.
Yeah, this is Penny. Just a quick, huge thank you for your open sharing of the tremendous work that you've done in a short time, 6 years. Very candid comments and very open and sharing across the board. So
if I may, let me just answer a question that just popped up, and it has to do with leadership in the company. I'm very proud to say that BS has become a net exporter of talent for the rest of the organization. So for instance, the HR director for Bacardi, Spain and Portugal is a Costa Rican who was our first HR director here. Our finance director for Spain used to be an order to cash supervisor sitting here in Costa Rica. She's also Costa Rican. We have, I want to say, between 10 and 15 Costa Ricans in different roles, mostly in Europe today, in different parts of the company, not necessarily BS. And that's one of our measures of success. How quickly and how well can we develop our people, not just for them to get access to better, bigger roles within the company, but for us to be able to refresh our talent pool continuously.
Yeah, that's a great ad. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny. Thank you, Julia, for everything. I think we have one last, but I think we will respond to this one on the chat offline to be respectful of time. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice
day,
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, and thank you to our attendees on the line for joining today's webcast. Just a reminder, as you do exit out of the Zoom, that Cpe Evaluation Survey should pop up in your browser. If it does not to worry, we'll send it via email as well in case you have any sort of pop-up blocker in place. Again, we do encourage everyone to complete that quick survey and provide feedback. It is a requirement for CPE credit, but it does help us continuously improve our webcast, so we appreciate your input. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. It does conclude today's Hackett webcast.